Okay, James, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. So you just got finished talking about, I guess the topic was from virtualization to the cloud. And I wanted to step back and just ask, you go in front of a lot of customers, and we were just talking before this. You said that the talk has sort of shifted from what is cloud to a more sophisticated conversation. I'm just curious if you could tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So, probably 4 months ago, I would say that most of the questions that we got in our executive briefing centers at Cisco or through my blog and then through Twitter was a lot of things about what is this cloud, what is cloud computing. People who are kind of really confused about the difference between cloud and virtualization, or the difference between cloud computing and internet applications. But the conversation's really shifted a lot in the last few months, and you're getting people just have been inundated with news and descriptions and definitions. So a lot more of the conversation is turning into, I'm seeing success stories here. Okay. How do I get some of those success stories in my business, right? Hearing the stories of Eli Lilly, just completely changing the way they're doing drug research, and in fact, maybe getting out of the business of acquiring new drugs from startups and doing some of their own new drug research again themselves, because they can try something crazy with a bunch of data for a month or two and be out a few $1,000s for the try if it doesn't work out, right? I mean, that's a complete difference from having to allocate the hardware up front as part of the budget.
Whose cloud are they using?
They're using a combination of Amazon Web Services and some internal stuff, right?
Okay.
So there's stories of companies in the startup world who've just seen a really, really huge reduction in the amount of venture capital that they require to get started, building a web business or building some sort of data analytics business. And you're seeing a lot of kind of boost in the stories about the way that people are looking at application development. So now processing really large sets of data isn't suddenly such a big deal anymore. You can actually think about something that goes out, or spinning up a different process or a different service for each instance of customer isn't such a big deal anymore, which gives you some flexibility in terms of how you bill and how you model the use of processing resources that for something like, say, video processing or something along those lines. So I think what people are seeing is they're beginning to say, wow, the numbers I'm hearing here are making sense to me. How do I take advantage of some of that?
And I'm just curious, just to push a little on that, is what type of people are getting the light bulbs going on? In other words, I'm sure you see a mix of C-level people plus IT people plus business people. Is it across the board? Is it the IT people who get it first? Is it the business? Is it the C-level people? Who's really doing the understanding?
So I probably interact mostly with IT people, so it's definitely the IT people that get it. I think what happens is the IT people kind of get the possibility. If they're open-minded enough about it, they introduce the possibilities to the business, and the business then experiences it, and they say, okay, wait a minute, there's some things we can do here. But at the same time, I mean, for businesses that have a lot of frustration with their IT departments, it's really tempting to hear about, hey, your developers can go off and just use their credit card. In fact, I've heard of one CIO who said, they did some analysis on a quarter's worth of data, and they had 50 different credit card accounts reporting expense reports for the use of Amazon Web Services and other external cloud services, right? So I mean, that's the other end of it, is that people are not waiting. They're not sitting back and waiting for IT to say this is how to use the cloud. They are going out and they're playing with it. The issue becomes when you turn that into a production resource, right? Is it something that the business is going to be comfortable doing in the model by which developers went and got the resources in the first place?
So does IT find this threatening, either that they will, on one hand, maybe they will put their production resources out on the cloud and eventually IT will be out of a job, or the other hand, they will then demand that the production resources be done on internal IT, and it'll just add a burden of more stuff? Are they sort of damned if they do, damned if they don't on that?
Well, I think what happens is, if you're an IT person, you've got to really kind of look at the change that's happening from you're not delivering a product anymore, you're delivering a service. That's a critical concept to get through your head, that you don't have to actually wire the server to be of value to the business. You can tell people how they can best get the compute capacity they need for the applications they want to deploy. You can help them through that process, and that's incredibly valuable. So I think what's happening is, yes, it's a little bit threatening to some IT people, but at the same time, I think that it's a huge opportunity for IT to change its model and its value to the business and become much more integral consulting partner with the business in terms of business process and business capabilities moving forward.
So you're seeing this light bulb going on. How would you, if you had to talk about your crystal ball, what would you see the evolution over the next 5 years? I think in your blog you said that you don't necessarily see everything going out to the cloud, as some people are saying. How would you just, if you sort of broad brushstroke, what would you see the evolution?
Yeah, I think there's low-hanging fruit applications that it just makes a ton of sense to do in the cloud. Your dev test labs, a lot of your performance testing and stress testing kind of elements, grid computing, batch processing, some of your unified communications capabilities, some of your core business applications that are common business applications, CRM, ERP, those kinds of things. I think there's going to be a certain amount of stuff that, as the budget and as the environment makes it relevant to do it, you're going to make those moves and make those changes. I think it's an evolutionary thing, though, because first of all, it is going to take us time to get the security technologies and the compliance environments and the control environments to a place where it really is comfortable to run production business in a large scale in the cloud. You can do some of that with SaaS today. But that's because you can abdicate much of that to the SaaS provider, right? You have less control, but at the same time, you can actually abdicate much more of the security responsibility and the control responsibility to the SaaS provider. So in some ways, it's going to be a squeeze. It's going to be a squeeze up of development from infrastructure as a service up through kind of platform as a service models into sort of more functionality being delivered. At the same time, that certain applications that make sense to be delivered from a SaaS perspective are going to go fairly quickly to SaaS, and then they're going to begin to look at how to extend and customize those applications in the cloud and how to integrate those applications into larger mashups in the cloud and so on. So I really, it's an evolutionary thing. I think it really is driven largely by regulatory and industry standards initiatives as much as it is by technology, and I think that's really going to be the gating factor that slows things down a bit.
Excellent. James Urquhart, thank you so much.
My pleasure.